Thank you. What a great turnout. We're really honoured to be here, and yeah, no, it's on. Hold on. She always does this. Yes, so it is an honour to be here in Perth. All this sort of started basically because we did just a little meeting. 4 people wanted to understand how it was all going, and so we did that. But it actually ended up 17 people in the room, and then they said, would we do another one? So we ended up with about 50 in the room in Melbourne, and from that, Perth has taken off. As you can see, we're here today. Sydney next week, and the Gold Coast as well. So we fly to Sydney and then the Gold Coast. So if you've got any people after you've heard all this information and you're really sort of like, wow, this is going to be something that's going to change people's lives, and believe me, it is going to change people's lives. And we're very excited to do that. Marnie and I come from a varied background. I actually have a nursing degree as well, and I went into dermal therapy and worked for cosmetic surgeons, etc. And then got into sort of traditional businesses, running my own skincare brands and also then creating them. So that's a little bit about me. Single mum, 4 kids, 4 beautiful kids, and I'm off to the US next week and a half for one that's getting married over there. So it's going to be a big next few weeks. But look, on that, we're going to actually keep it going. Any notes, please take them. We'll answer whatever what we can, and I know Marnie is a wealth of information, and there's nothing that she can't actually answer. So, and if she can't, well, between us all, we can. So that's pretty exciting. We're actually going to do now the did it wrong. Sorry, it's upside down. Did it wrong again. I'm blonde.
Hey, I dyed my hair brown, didn't make me any smarter.
Hey, how am I doing this? You can do it. I'm older. Here, disclaimer. Okay, private placement program. Disclaimer is investing in monetary markets, including private equity and arbitrage trading, are leveraged products that can carry a high level of risk to your capital. Only invest what you can afford to risk. Past performance is no guarantee of future performances. We encourage you to seek independent financial advice and complete your own due diligence. We're not financial advisors. This program with UCI Global does not accept USA members to participate. We always do that disclaimer. As we said, we are not financial advisors, and we do recommend that you do your due diligence and make sure that it's not for everybody. This is not a business for everybody or an investment platform for everybody. So I think it's important that you go away, you think about it, or go back to the person who invited you and discuss with them if this is really for you. And if it's not, no big deal. We're not going to be dragging you by the ball and chain to join. That's not what we're about. So on that note, I'm going to actually pass it to Marnie. Marnie can tell you a little bit about herself and then get into the program. Yes, you're going to.
Really? Okay. Hi everyone. I feel like I don't need a microphone, but I do. Okay. About myself. I'm frenetically mentally busy. Like Nathan said, I have twin boys, identical at 15, and they've been full on since the day where they were born, and they haven't slowed down one bit. And I met this amazing lady who is my beauty therapist, my counsellor, my business partner, my leveller, my best friend, my everything. We met 3 years ago by chance, and I was in the middle of changing a career. I'd been in a family business for a long time, 27 years, and I just decided that I needed to do something different, and I packed up everything and I just took off. Did a sea change and met Marianne, and she's changed my life. I like to think I've changed her life. And
She's made me busy.
yeah, we're frenetic.
Retiring, believe me.
I'm a bit of a stress nut as a trader, and Marianne calms me, very much calms me. So we're yin and yang, I think you call it. So yeah, we met, we clicked, and we discovered that we both had the interest of wealth diversification I had been, for a better word, burnt, lost money through various entities, family, ex-husbands, ex-business partners. Every person had burnt me. And I knew then that I had to take total control. It rested with me, and whatever decisions I made, that was it. Had to stop with me. And that's where I'm at now. So we had that in common. We were single parents, and we just clicked. So we said, what are we going to do? So we need to find out what we can do and what we can't do. So we spent actually the last 2.5 years, probably the first 6 months, losing a lot of money. So if anyone says, does this work? We can say yes or no, because we've actually experienced it. We've actually done it. We can tell you what not to do, what to do, but we are not financial advisors. We can only tell you what works for us. We discovered crypto, and we're obsessed with cryptocurrency. This isn't cryptocurrency, but totally have that interest. We also wanted to learn about the world economy and the monetary markets and how bad they are, and how, for a better word, we have wool pulled over our eyes with blinkers on. We're told to go and buy a house. We're told to buy 2 houses. Nathan has 4 houses, 10 houses. We have lots of houses, 100 houses. Work. Don't see your family, don't see your friends, and you get nowhere, pay taxes, and life's over. So we wanted something different. So we embarked on this course, and we taught ourselves to trade. We taught ourselves to trade through YouTube, through training schools, through mentors. 2 years ago, next month, I put myself on LinkedIn because my LinkedIn profile was terrible from the past, and I needed to wipe it. And I thought, I don't really know how this works. I hashtagged myself. I didn't know what that meant at the time. And I just put a few things in: blockchain, cryptocurrency, hedge funds. I wanted to know about everything to do with blockchain technology, the monetary market, stock exchange. I'm a keen traveller, and I've always gone overseas and look at the Australian dollar and how terrible it is. I wanted to understand how it works. So I was on LinkedIn one day, and I did all these hashtags, and I sent them out, and then I went through LinkedIn and just looked for people that had similar interests to me, and a man came up called Anton Toubier. So I sent him a message, and that's why I'm here today, from 2 years ago. So I just reached out and said who I was, and that I needed some help, and couldn't pay anyone, and I didn't expect to be paid, but I just wanted to learn, and I needed a mentor. And he was gracious enough to say, sure. And Marianne and I will say now that we love Anton dearly. He's just a kinder soul, has bent over backwards for both of us, and has given us 50% of his company. And I don't know who else would do that. So it's a pretty amazing thing. So we're legit, we're here. Anton's real. The other 2 directors, Lee and Brendan. Lee's in the UK. We were speaking to Lee before. I met Lee through trading. Lee and I and Marianne do business together with trading. And Brendan we met through Lee, we know him as Crypto Bren. He's a YouTube influencer. And poor Brendan at the moment's on his way to Colorado because he's just escaped the North Carolina hurricane. He lost everything last year. He lost his whole house. So he's essentially packed up his, what do you call it? Trailer. And he's put it in a cement concrete warehouse, and he's on his way to Colorado, 22-hour trip. So our thoughts are with Brendan because it's a really hard time. So the 4 of us are directors, and with Anton make up UCI Global. So that's what brought us here today. So that's a bit about me anyway. Okay, so you understand here? Okay, pool 1 and pool 2. Should go back to that. How'd they come to that? Okay, so Marianne and I were deep in trading one day, and I'd worked with Anton on some joint venture deals and acquisitions and learning how high-end elite clients make their money. And Marianne passed me this document about pool 1. I didn't know what it was. And I looked at it and it said, invest $500, get $50,000. I can't swear because there's kids in the room, but the expletives that come out of my mouth, you could just imagine. And I just looked at it again. I went, oh, whatever. Just take the 500, invest it. Because for me, as a trader, I'm risk ratio, and that's a no-brainer. That was my opinion. I just gave her the money, do it. Right? Didn't even think about it. Then, about a week later, I looked into it, And I said, who's that name on the bottom of that? Oh my God, that's Anton's name. How did I not see that was Anton? Why didn't you tell me that was Anton? And Anton and I had been working on other ventures. His other strategic planning business partner at the time was looking at that, and we didn't even know. So that's how we got involved. We invested in pool 1 and then obviously invested in pool 2. And then, long story, but Anton said, could you please take over pool 2? Could you organise it all from an Australian perspective? And we said, yes, sure. Big decision, a lot of work. And then he said pool 3, and he said, but this is the final pool. And we get asked all the time, why are we saying it's the final pool? Is it pool 3? Is it pool 4? Is it pool 5? There is no more pools. And we're not saying that because of a scare to get anyone to invest, because at the end of the day, and I need to say this with all due respect, it makes no difference to Marianne and I if any of you lovely people invest, we're getting paid anyway. We simply do this because we have that other link that we want to help people. That's what we get out of it, because we enjoy helping our friends and our family, and we like helping people. That's why we're here. So there's nothing off us. Thank you. Thank you, Edna. So that's why we're here. So we took over pool 2, understood why there was only pool 3 and it was the final pool, and that's what brings us today. So I'll start with the slides.
Pool 1 and pool 2 mature. They don't mature till around, end of December, but payouts won't be till sort of around January. So people are going to say, have you been paid out? Well, they've already started, and then the final pool is very different, and pool 1 and pool 2 depended on having an elite investor with a minimum of $10 million to put up front, okay? And we piggybacked onto that, and that's how you were able to put those 500 US lots in, because you piggybacked on the 10 million. And that's how it was first done. But pool 3, or final pool, we call it final pool, is because we're crowdfunding to be the investor. So we will be the $10 million investor. Because the difference is, with pool 1 and pool 2, the investor, $10 million investor, or 30 million, actually it was a $30 million investor, he gets paid his profits weekly, and then he can say, well, I've had enough now, I'm actually going to pull it out. The 10 million still sits there being traded, but he can actually just take his profits out, etc. Whereas this way, because we're going to be the actual investor, we know the profits are staying in there, and that's how that actually pays out. And the final pool will be, the reason there is no other pool is because everyone that has actually joined is in what we call an intentional community. So if there are other programs, which there will be, and will tell you that now, the people that are in that community or are members already will have the opportunity. So it will never be open to the public again from this level. Okay?
I think I've sort of talked before the slides, but directors, this is Anton. We'll get Anton on a live screen soon. A little bit about Anton. Well, he can tell you a little bit about himself, but from where we stand, he was born in Lebanon and has a shocking upbringing story. But he's all self-made, and I hope he tells the Bitcoin story because he bought Bitcoin at 30 cents. Those of you know, yeah. He woke up the next day and he was a millionaire. So that's how he started, but he's also been the sort of person that at 13 was building computers and wanting to know how things worked. He's an IT specialist. He built the UCI global back office. He maintains it. He's just a genius at everything he touches to do with computers. But Anton, I think, can tell you a little bit about himself when he comes on. Then it's obviously me, Marianne, Lee. Lee is a genius when it comes to IT. He's a web developer, a bot developer, a trader, a gold developer, gold trader. Very, very, very skilled. And we mentioned Mr. Brendan Parker.
So as you can see, this funnel's not to be promoted publicly, only privately. So, and that's because it is what we call a PPP, private placement program. And under certain laws, you can't do that.
Okay, so we're going to go for the first thing, I know that a lot of people would not have seen what we call a whiteboard video, and I think it was like a couple of months ago when we were working on this, it literally took us 2 months to get what you're about to see in the most concise format that we could do, because there's so much information, it's really difficult to capture it in a very short space of time. So I'll click this video on, you can watch it, and it's about 5 minutes.
UCI Global Private Placement Program explained. To understand how UCI Global participates in this private placement program, you first need to understand how money is created, how the private placement program commenced, and how UCI Global participates and profits in this arbitrage trading program. Step 1. How currency is created. The U.S. Treasury creates out of thin air bonds, which are essentially IOUs in the form of a check. The Federal Reserve then writes a check, which creates currency. The currency is then used by the banks to issue loans to the public. The public uses this currency in the form of loans to purchase real estate, cars, etc. Loans incur interest that has to be paid back to the banks. The U.S. Treasury, Federal Reserve, and the banks recycle this debt process. Money is created from nothing, increasing inflation, which creates more debt in the world's economy. Step number 2. Why does the private placement program exist today? After the economic devastation created by World War II, the European governments and banks needed to provide stability, stimulate, and rebuild the world economies. The U.S. Treasury, the Federal Reserve, and the banks created these private placement programs for these reasons. Profits made directly from these private placement programs were required to spend a percentage of the profits on infrastructure and boosting the world economy. The banks and principal traders involved with this PPP are regulated in the US and Europe. Step number 3. How do private placement programs work, and what is arbitrage bank trading? Financial investments, called debts, are traded within the banking system. The major banks, such as Barclays, JP Morgan, and HSBC, exchange these financial debts, which are also known as Standby Letters of Credits, SBLC. A bank trader has access to a contracted buyer and seller, who understands that they will make profit engaging in this trade. This process is called arbitrage bank trading. Let's take this example. A contracted buyer and seller, through the traders, buy a bank guarantee, bank debt, for $80 million, and resell it for $82 million, at the same time, thus creating a risk-free trade. These types of trades are executed multiple times a day through a regulated online platform that guarantees both the trade and profit. Step number 4. How does UCI Global participate in the private placement program? UCI Global participates as the investor in this private placement program. This private placement program is strictly by invitation only. The capital is protected at all times, cannot be touched, and is blocked by the bank for the entire duration of the trading cycle, which is for 40 weeks. This capital is held in an escrow account, managed by international accounts and auditors. A contract is then issued and entered into by UCI Global via the bank's trade compliance officer. The contract states the terms and conditions of the trading program. Step number 5. How does UCI Global profit from the private placement program? The capital in UCI Global's account is used as leverage in multiple multi-million-dollar trades. The principal traders arbitrage 2 to 5 trades per day and then compound the profits weekly. It is this compounding that gives the investor an outstanding return after 40 weeks. At the end of the trading cycle, the official paymaster transfers the profits back to UCI Global's escrow account. The escrow account management service will commence the payouts directly to all investors. UCI Global investors can rest assured that the power of leverage, arbitrage trading, and compounding makes this private placement program a very lucrative and protected investment. Thank you for watching this short explanation of UCI's Global Private Placement Program. This is a time-sensitive investment, and once the capital is raised, this pool will close and trading will commence. Please contact us via our website at uci.global or the person who has sent you this video for further instruction. Follow us on Telegram, Discord, and Facebook.
So I'll try to explain to you all in concise nature exactly what that was all about, okay? The slides are going to come after this, but what I'm going to tell you first of all is what a private placement is not, okay? So the first thing it's not a multi-level marketing. So if you think that's what it is definitely not that, okay? It's definitely not a Ponzi scheme. Those of you who know, Marianne's the best person to give a definition of a Ponzi scheme. We have been in Ponzi schemes. We unfortunately are still in some Ponzi schemes. But a Ponzi scheme definitely needs an investor to pay another investor. If that smaller investor doesn't pay the larger investor or the person that's been in the program longer, the program will collapse. Okay? Yeah, it just needs more recruitment, and if that recruitment dries up, which it generally does, then everything falls over. We don't need, for lack of a better word, multitude of investors, because we could have 1,000 investors pooling money together to get 10 million, or we could have 2 people getting 10 million. So it's still 10 million, doesn't matter how we get there. All right, we're well on the way, by the way. Marianne doesn't want me to say that, but we're well on the way. Okay. It's not cryptocurrency, okay? You can pay by cryptocurrency and you can get paid out by cryptocurrency, but it is not cryptocurrency. It's not share trading. It's not foreign exchange trading, okay? Those 5 things it is definitely not. What is a private placement program? It's a private equity agreement. It's in a class of its own. It's like Nathan said in the beginning, it's something you've never seen before. What's the history of private placement? Well, just generally, it started at the end of World War II. I'm a history buff, so I researched a lot about it. At the end of World War II, Europe was absolutely decimated. They had to rebuild the war and rebuild the countries after the war. And generally what happened was the Federal Reserve prints money. For those of you who don't understand that, they generally print money. They needed to create more bank debt. And by creating debt, they create what we call private placement programs. They need funds to build infrastructure, schools, communities, buildings, shopping centres. They needed the money to do that. So that came back from, healthcare systems, everything you can imagine. The whole economy in Europe had to be rebuilt. They needed to create debt, okay? And around that time, there was some people with a lot of money that went to the banks and said, okay, well, I want to borrow some money to build a whole lot of homes. I need $500 million. And the bank just wrote them an IOU and said, here's $500 million. Off you go and build. And that went on and on and on. So it started 70 years ago, over 70 years ago. It's been around a long time. It also ended with Bretton Woods, and if you understand how the monetary markets worked and the backing of the US dollar in 1971. So I'll go back to that slide. Here we go. World War II. Okay. Here we go. So essentially the profits that come out of a PPP are then put back into infrastructure development. How do you recognise a genuine PPP? Well, it's funny in our times, we've had a lot of people send us links to scams, and there are many, many scams out there. So to bring that to your attention, what the most important thing you need to remember, and this is why UCI is backed on a genuine private placement program, is there's 3 paramount factors that you need. The first thing is you need to be invited. So for example, if I had $10 million, and I will one day very soon, if I walked into a bank in Europe and I said, I have $10 million, I would like to be involved in a private placement program, they would say, you can't come in. I have the money, but I'm not invited. I don't have the exclusive access. Okay, so you can't just rock up and say, I have a lot of money, I want to come in. So you have to be invited. UCI Global, through the last 2 years, has gained that access. We have the private access to become involved in our own private placement program. The investor funds, so a lot of scam private placement programs are scams because the investor was asked to move their money to someone else's account, their own $10 million, move it, and then it got lost in transactions. You know what happens, it just gets lost. They were asked to move their money by their bank, okay? With UCI, our funds don't leave our account. So your funds, all the pooled funds, are in escrow. And for those of you that don't understand what escrow is, it's an account that's locked up and it can't move. It has an MT799 attached to it. And that's a bank term for a bank term that means that account is checked daily. No funds are allowed to leave it. It's locked. Now, on top of that escrow account, Marianne, myself, Lee, Brendan and Anton, we went to Georgia, as Nathan mentioned before, and we signed an escrow account. So no funds can leave that account. Now, we actually had a lady a couple of weeks ago that asked for a refund. She was going through some financial difficulty. We can't give her money back because it's in escrow. So anyone that invests, there's no refund, because once it's in escrow, we have what's called a DigiPass, and we're in 4 different countries around the world. We need to be in that DigiPass within a minute of each other to give a code, to give the bank authorisation to release money. It's not going to happen. We have a private agreement in place too that's not going to happen. So that's what a private escrow is. So we have the investor funds locked up and then allowed to leave the account. The third thing that's a paramount factor is that there's a legal paymaster utilised to distribute investor payouts. Okay, so at the end of the 40 weeks, all the payout, all the capital is in UCI, and we have a payment processor, which will probably be someone like Deloitte's or Ernst & Young will be our person that will be told, can you please pay out all these investor funds? So we will be using a regulated paymaster. Tier 1 banks. There's PPPs that exist in banks that are banks that shouldn't be banks. So where people have been ripped off, it's because they've gone with the wrong bank. We only have access, or we only use access, to intrabank trade desks in London, Singapore and Switzerland. Now, when we start off our trade, we will be based in London, and we will actually probably use a legal paymaster called Bentley Legal as well. Our aim is to be in Switzerland. And why is our aim to be in Switzerland? Because the minimum private placement program in Switzerland is 100 million. We will be in Switzerland next year. That's the plan. I should also add that it's not on these slides, that I was told by Anton last week that as from next year, the minimum cap to get into a private placement in Europe is 100 million. It's going to 100 million next year. So when it started back after the Second World War, it was 100 million. And then it stayed 100 million until the financial crisis of 2008, and they reverted it to 10 million because they needed people to invest. They've got that, and now they're going back to 100 million. It's going to happen next year. We don't have a date when, hence why we're going to get in now, because we don't have 100 million, and to raise, as you can appreciate, 10 million is hard, but to raise 100 million is probably out of our range. At this stage. Okay, regulation. SEC, okay, so how it works, and the simplest way to explain it is that when we have raised the 10 million capital, UCI Global has to have what's called a KYC, it's Know Your Customer. We have to do that, then we have to do an AML, which is anti-monetary laundering, and we pass that file, and then the next file that we have to get to is the SEC. So the SEC will actually get our file. Once the SEC's had it, it then goes back to the bank and it goes within the trade desk. So they want to check that UCI is clean, everything's fine, which it is. If it's not, we wouldn't get in the program, but we already had that access to get in. So it is regulated by the SEC and it's regulated by the European Central Bank in Europe.
Everyone knows what KYC is.
Know your customer? Yep.
We do it every day.
Yep, we don't realise we do it.
Before it every day. Whenever you open an account, you have to do your 100-point check. Well, that's what the KYC is. The AML was brought into existence in Europe for the money laundering for terrorism, the black web, all those sort of things.
It's all right.
That's all right. Oh, thank you. So that's...
Yeah, flick it up.
Is that on? One,
Yeah,
two?
yeah.
So that's what the AML and anything to do with Europe and now with Australia, everywhere. It's all about making sure that there's no money laundering going on, and they're making it harder and harder and harder. You know, AUSTRAC the Australian Security Cyber Attack Side checks every so often, even to the point where you can actually have your accounts blocked. And we've had that happen over the last couple of weeks. A couple of people have had their accounts blocked and they've had to sort of go in and say, well, hey,
it's my money.
It's my money, I can do it and they actually unblock it. They say they do random checks. And I mean, banks do that regularly. They can do that at any time.
Okay.
So
how the PPP works. So I'm not going to read from here because it's in my head. So essentially, it took me a long time to understand this, so I'm going to try and explain it as concisely as I can. So every day that we're going to work, the big organisations, people with lots of money, have debt and they need to create more debt. So what they do is, take for example that example that was on the slide. Someone borrowed 800 million and it's called a standby letter of credit. They want to sell that standby letter of credit. They've had it for a couple of years and they want to offload it. Now, they can't go back to the bank and get it offloaded because they owe the bank money and it's a conflict of interest. But the bank says, we've got traders in our trade desk that can actually find you a buyer for that actual SBLC. And that's what happens. So these sales that happen between the contract buyers and sellers, they're organised months in advance. They just come up on the calendar. They happen every day in Europe, every day. And multitude of them happen every day. So say that 800 million person wants to sell their debt. The trade at the trade desk finds a buyer and he might want to pay 840 million for it. The trade takes place, the 40 million profit, the trader gets 2% and locks it away at the end of the week. Now, just remember that for a minute. Now, how did that trader do that? The trader doesn't have $840 million. The bank cannot give the trader the money, it's conflict of interest, and the buyer and the seller, they're not giving their money because they want to sell it and one wants to buy it. So what do they need? They need an investor. They need to use someone's digital currency. That's UCI. Okay, so what happens, if you can imagine, there's 10 accounts that this trader has access to and one of them is ours. We're ready to go, our 10 million's locked in our account and they pick us up on a Monday morning. We need to use UCI Global's money to exchange trade between a buyer and a contracted seller. But guess what? It's not just 10 million in our account. They can leverage it at 20 times the amount. So they've got 200 million. All right. Now, let's just say, for instance, they've got 5 accounts that day that they use and they can leverage them all. Let's keep it simple. They're all 10 million and they can leverage them all at 20 times. Anyone got a figure in their brain of how much money they've got? $1 billion. At their hands, at their disposal. Money never leaves the account. It's digital on screen, like a Visa and a MasterCard. You've got digital currency. If you didn't know that, it's digital currency. They utilise that currency. They show the buyer and the seller, we've got access to $1 billion. The trade takes place and they bank, so-called bank that money at the end of the week. Now this trader, these trade desks can do anything to 2 to 5 trades a day at 2% per profit of the trade. The dollars are amazing. And what they do at the end of the week, they say, okay, well, we use the investor UCI Global, we use the investor ABC, and the other 3 accounts. We need to compensate them for using their funds. Now, their compensation is 10 to 25% a week on their 10 million. So let's just deal at 10%. Okay, so $1 million. So what Marianne said before, in pool 1 and pool 2, the pool 2 investor has 30 million euro in his account. He's getting 10%, he's getting 3 million euro a week. Now he can at the end of the week go, okay, I've made 3 million, I'm out of here. Why would you? You're going to make 3 million minimum a week, you're not going to leave. Well, you shouldn't leave. Okay, he's going to compound it. So at the end of the week, just say UCI Global, when we start, we have $10 million, and we have $1 million in profit at 10%. The next week we start the trading, we start at 11 million. We get paid 10%. The next week we have 12.1 million. Again, it just keeps going. But 10% is the minimum. That's how it works. That's a contracted buy. That's the easiest way I can explain how it works.
That's why it's called risk-free.
Risk-free. When I heard risk-free, I said, it can't be risk-free. There's nothing that's risk-free. Well, it's risk-free because the funds never leave the account. It's digitalised money, and they're just using it to show the contracted buyer and seller they have access to funds. They can't use the bank's funds. It's conflict of interest. They can't use the buyer and seller because they're involved in the trade. So they need access to $1 million accounts. Okay? These 3 banks we've mentioned, these are top tier 1 banks. We will potentially use Barclays, what Anton has told me, or JP Morgan. Okay? It's called arbitrage bank trading. If you use the term arbitrage essentially means, and I liken it to crypto, and I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to because it's easy to understand. If I want to buy Bitcoin and it's at $10,000 US, I can buy it off an exchange for $10,000 US. But I might also know that it's on another exchange for $10,500. So I'm going to sell it from one exchange to the other and make profit. That's called arbitrage. That's exactly what happens here in banks. Okay, so that's our contracted buyer and seller and the bank in the middle and the trader. Okay? I've given you that example, so everyone should understand that now. The bank dead in the middle. Risk-free. The online platforms talking about the digital currency. So it's all digitalised. It's guaranteed both the trader and they profit. The terms and conditions of the contract are already done by the trade desk. So like I said before, these deals are worked out months in advance. It's just a signed contract. It's already done. AML are all done by these traders and also by the buyers and sellers. Escrow account. Okay, so our funds that we're raising now are already in escrow. They stay in escrow for the entirety of the trading platform until we pay out. 2 to 5 trades a day, said that. Escrow account. There's the 5 of us. That was funny. We did that before there was 5 of us. Compounding is the most amazing concept. If you put $1,000 in a bank and you get 10% at the end of the week, which you won't get, and you keep that money in the bank and you compound it, you will have a mass amount of money at the end of the year. This is exactly what we're doing. It's the power of compound.
They say it's the 8th wonder of the world.
Yeah. I know from the figures that are in my head that when we have 10 million and we compound it, and it's, I think I'll work it out on 15%, which you'll see a slide soon. I think at week 18, it starts going absolutely nuts. And one question we get asked a lot is how the hell can you pay out that much money? Simple terms, if you can get these figures, you can write them down. $10 million compounded at 15% in 40 weeks is 2.326 billion. How does it get that? Just keeps compounding. Okay? Come back to that figure in a minute. Okay, that's the slide, so we'll go to the next slide. Just write that figure down. 2.326 billion. Crowdfunding. So as Marianne and Nathan have touched on, this is the final pool, and this is, try and explain now why our intentional community, everyone that's invested or does invest, once we've raised that capital, we don't need anyone else's capital. We have the capital, it's compounded, and we have $2.32 billion. Zeros. Okay? We had stages that happened. So the first 100 people that were lucky enough, I suppose, for a better word, we call them the founding 100. They were the first 100 people to fund their positions. So we're transparent, it's on the table. They get double their money. They invest 50,000, they get paid 100. Okay? Stage 2, we call Club 500, happened very quickly, and it's probably most of you sitting here and people that haven't invested. Unfortunately, you have missed that stage. Now, why did we raise this stage? We've been asked that question. Why did we do that? Because our aim is to get this capital raised as quick as possible so we can start trading and everyone that's invested can reap the funds. If we just have $500 investors keep going, it's going to take us a long time. Okay, so we need to get it done quickly and effectively and start the trading. So this ended on the 31st of August. So anyone that invested in Club 500 invested $500, and for every $500 they invested, they'll receive $50,000, all US.
And they can also top up.
We'll come back to top-ups.
Yeah.
Yep. Stage 3, it's now what we're in now. It's Club 2000. It's a minimum investment of 2,000. Okay, that's open now. What we've done, I should digress those of you that have invested, we went from 800 accounts one week to over 3,000 accounts at the end of the week. So what everyone did that invested, they invested with one account in their own name, and then through our structuring of explaining to someone, they said, can I have another account? Yes, you can have 2 accounts maximum. 2 personal accounts. And I don't understand layering of commissions. I'm getting better at it. Marianne's the expert. Why would you have 2 accounts? Well, if you're going to invest $2,000, you don't just put it in one account. Okay, so you can, but it's not as beneficial and profitable to you to do it that way. We'll explain that a little bit later.
Yeah. Just a quick, that 2,000 doesn't mean you pay 2,000, you get 50,000.
It's 200.
It's still 200,000. So for every 500 US, you are still receiving 50,000. So if that's 2,000, that's 200,000. Okay, we've had that question asked to us. So just I think that's an important thing to realise, because we've had people say, oh, I'm only going to get 50,000. No, you still receive the 200. We've just increased the limit.
We had to increase the limit.
Yeah.
And you guys will hear it today. It's going to be 5,000 by the end of September. And then it will...
If we don't close.
Hint, hint. Okay? I'll be in trouble later. Phase 2, compliance and approvals. So we've just actually probably gone through that. Know your customer, anti-monetary laundering, SEC check, trade desk check. Now what that means is these trade desks in London, Singapore, and I've forgotten Switzerland, they have trade desks, and there is only a handful of traders on each trade desk. These traders talk, and if any of their clients have done anything wrong, they will not touch them. Okay? The US investors, they won't touch a US investor generally. Why? Because the SEC have, for a better word,
made it very difficult for US citizens to invest. With the SEC comes the FBI, and they came about in 1969 with their financial crash, and it was to protect the US citizens from investing and losing their money. But in the process, like a lot of things that go on in governments, etc., is then they start to control people by doing these things. And so, unfortunately, it's just so much paperwork to get a US investor to invest. Not only they have to be, they're known as elite wealth, they have to have a minimum of like 200,000 in their account, they have to have been totally checked out, and then the list just goes on and on and on. And a lot of the trade desks don't even like dealing with the US investors because it becomes...
They make it difficult.
It makes it really difficult, which is sad, because that's it's controlling people. One
of the hardest things Marianne and I had to do recently was we had taken people's money, we had to give it back. And
now that's not are we a Ponzi scheme? We're handing people's money back. Hello? I mean, that, and it was sad. It was sad because these people really wanted to be in it, but we actually had to...
in the best interest of everyone.
Yeah.
We couldn't have it.
Yeah.
So that's really difficult. Even Brendan, a director, can't invest. He's not allowed to invest. How does Brendan get into this? Well, I'm just going to say Marianne and Marnie, he's friends and we're helping. A director cannot invest. Yeah. He's not allowed to as a US citizen. So it's a 40-week trading period. This is why it's 40 weeks to compound. So to get from $500 to 50,000, you need 40 weeks. Okay. We've said escrow, zero risk limit trades, weekly profits returned in account delegated by paymaster, compounded weekly. Okay, what we're going to do, once we start the trading, there'll be a quarterly update. So we'll have disclosed our bank account with the profit, and you'll see the balance at the quarterly report. Phase 4 is the payout. Now, to explain it, again, I'll try to explain it really simply. A company is not allowed to sell their shares to an individual and not pay tax. Real simple. So what we've done here, to make it simple and to make our private placement program work for everyone, it's what we call a share buyback system. So if you invest $2,000, we're going to give you $2,000 worth of shares at $1 each. And then we're going to give you a written guarantee by all directors that at the end of the trading period, we're going to buy those shares back off you at 100 times what you paid for them, in writing guaranteed. Now, we had someone say to us the other day, that's not legal. It's legal in every jurisdiction in the world. We've already checked it out. We've done our homework. If anyone wants to go us, they can go us. So we're not going to make an agreement or a contract that, one, we can't facilitate, and two, that's going to end us in hot water. So that should be, rest assured, it's all guaranteed, risk-free, and you have a share buyback at 100 times the rate. Payments are processed by the international auditing firm and processors, and we do expect to take 4 to 8 weeks. Now, this comes back again. If we have, I think we've got over 1,100, 1,200 investors now. If we had 5,000, this process would take 3 months because everyone is paid individually, one-on-one, 3 checks per person, to be very thorough. We can't make a mistake. And if those of you that understand Bitcoin, once you send Bitcoin, you can't get it back. It's gone.
So it has to be checked,
Triple checked.
double checked, triple checked.
Someone else got to check it.
And yeah, it's,
I've paid Bitcoin in the wrong wallet. It's still sitting in that wallet, wherever it is.
Yeah, I did too. Lucky it wasn't much.
So how is 100 times your capital reached? We've just already pretty much explained that. 10 to 15% weekly. Now, that's conservative, what we work on. But at the end of the day, if we get some trades in there that are higher, it's still invest $500, it's a $50,000 return. Invest $2,000, $200,000 return. We've explained the 500, 2,000, our 10 million. Can we see that calculator's going to come off? Everyone see that? Sort of? I think we've got a handout of that, Nathan. Has everyone got a calculator handout? No? Haven't got it? Okay. Everyone see that? Okay. Can you see week 1? It says September 1. Just a date. I had to put a date there. Okay. So $500. The commission, 13%, I worked it out. And this is all on Discord for those, so don't worry about taking photos because it's all on Discord. You can see how it compounds right down to week 40. And it really starts taking off about week 18, 19. Okay? That's all it's done is the money's banked back in there, back in there, back in there, and gets to that. Trade fees at the bottom, investor profits 50,000. This is 2,000. Start at 2,000. See down the bottom, week 40. Same amount, same compounding. Trade fees, and if you divide that by 4, it's about 7,000 or 8,000 per 50,000, and the investor profits 200,000. Okay, so if you're trying to work out how much am I going to get back, just times it by 100. Add 2 zeros. This is our 10 million compound calculator. I like this calculator. Okay, so just have a look at it. Look at week 17. 93 million. Yep. And then it goes nuts. 2.3. Remember that figure I got you to write down before? 2.3. How do we make money from that? We've got a massive payout. How can we offer 100 times? Okay. Remember what I said before? It doesn't matter if there's 1,000 investors investing, pooling 10 million, or there's 2 investors. Let's just stick with, it doesn't matter which it is, it's $10 million. Can anyone tell me what that return's going to be on a 10 million investor? What their return is going to be? Yep.
1 billion.
No. If I walk into this program and invest $10 million and it's 100 times my return, $1 billion. $1 billion. Yep. So 10 million, add the 2 zeros. this investor is going to get $1 billion. So when we all pull 10 million together, the payout is $1 billion. Yep. The commission, which we'll go into a little bit later, the maximum commission that can be earned on 10 million is 250 million. It's 5%. Okay, so once we pay out the $1 billion payouts, we pay out the 250 million in commission. Can you see what's left? Roughly $1 billion. Yep. Anton, I have no problem. 50% shareholder. Marianne, Marnie, Lee, Brendan, 12%. That's why we're getting paid, irrespective of who invests. It's that simple. Okay, so that's how we pay it. So when anyone says and they sceptically say you can't do it, we can do it. We will do it. That's
They've
how
already
it's done.
done the figures. They already know the figures.
All right. Okay. The commission calculator is coming up next, and this one you really need to have a really good look at. Okay. So let's just say I invest $2,000. We have provided, or Anton has provided, a commission bonus, for a better word, that's 5 levels deep, and it's 5%. Okay, so if I invest $2,000, the 5 levels before me are getting paid $10,000 each level at the end. It's called post-traded. So the way to work that out is you just multiply what someone's going to invest by 5.
So for every $500, you'll earn $25. All right,
5%.
So it's 5%, 5 levels deep, that's 25%. So that's pre-traded. Now, post-traded, you add your 2 zeros. So for each referral, you get $2,500.
25 pre-traded,
So it's
post-traded 2,500. So just think of 2,500. That's funny. Quick story. Girlfriend of mine, friend that I really want to help, I chucked in $500 for her. She was in tears. Got $500, you're going to get 50,000. And I said, by the way, I've put 2 people as your referral. She goes, what? I said, she didn't understand. I told her, you're going to get another $5,000. You're going to get $50,000 at the end plus $5,000. And then 3 weeks later I looked and there's now 10 downlines to that one person. So she's now going to get, can anyone tell me, 10 times 2,500, 25,000 plus her 50,000, and she thinks it's going to stop there. I'm not telling her anything else because I know that she's going to earn more from that downline continuing than she will from the initial $500. Yep. US dollars.
It's US dollars, exactly.
And the Australian dollar is so bad, it's even better. Yep. All right. So you can read across all these calculators are available in Discord. You can download them anytime, but you can just see the structure. It's all the same, and the total commission payout on the 5 levels is at the end. If you work out percentages, it's 5% on each level. It's 25%. So like I said before, we have a $10 million investor. They get paid $50,000. Okay?
50 million.
50 million, I should say, dollars. 250 million is paid out at the end. So this 10 million investor gets $1 billion. At the end, it's 250 million paid out. 1.25 million. We've still got $1 billion left.
And it still goes the same if you have 11 million or 15 million. We know that, and the way it's going is it's not going to end at 10 million.
It's not going to start at 10 million. That's the minimum. To be a requirement to start the trade, you have to have 10 million and $1 in your bank account.
We might trade with 15, 20 million. So you can see that even those commissions and what people get paid at will still be the same.
Okay. Guarantees. We wanted to make it really easy for everyone to understand that we're transparent and that it's crucial that everyone understands how it works. So like we've touched on before, all directors' signatories are on that company bank account. No one can touch it. It's in escrow. The purchasing of the share buyback system is what we call a Class B share. You have no voting rights, obviously. That's what a Class B share is. Escrow account, during and whilst in trading. And this document's called a company share buyback program. So you can see, if you can all read that document, it's in the back of Discord. Everyone will get one once trading has commenced. Why don't you get it now? Because people are topping up. So if they keep topping up, we're going to have to keep giving buyback share guarantee certificates. So once trading starts, it'll be a good month later, everyone will receive one of these documents. Now, if you are investing as an individual, it'll have your name on it, and that's why you put beneficiary yourself. If you've invested in a self-managed super fund or a company, your company name or self-managed fund name will be on this document. That's a guarantee, corporate guarantee. Insurance policy. We'll have an insurance policy. We had this question last time at the Melbourne, it was hilarious. An insurance policy, probably by Lloyd's of London, on the whole entire trading program. So you've got everything in escrow, a guarantee in share buyback, and the whole program is guaranteed by Lloyd's of London. And I don't know where else you can get anything else. One lady asked us at the Melbourne, what happens if there's World War IV, the insurance companies fall over and the banks fall over? Well, we'll have anarchy for a start, the likelihood of that. But the actual thing that Anton answered was when we have World War IV, private placement programs get better because they have to create more debt. They need the army tanks funded. You understand? They need to create debt. So people are going around saying, I want more debt. I need to buy another SPLC. There'll be more private placement programs.
The infrastructures again.
Because you knocked them down.
They have to put X amount of money, 10 to 20%
Back
into infrastructure. So that's what it's in. But I'm told World War IV will be in space anyway. It'll be with all the satellites that are up there. They'll be shooting each other down.
Are we up to Q&A already? Really? We up to Q&A? Wow. That was quick. I did quicker than I thought. I'm impressed.
That's because she didn't ask questions in between.
Yeah, see, on Melbourne, we asked questions. We're there for 4 hours. It was amazing. So, what we're going to do, Nathan, do you want to... Yep. Yep. Have a break before questions?
5, 10 minutes.
I don't know. I'm up to 31. 31? Break? Yep. Okay, we're going to have a 5-minute break now. We've got some drinks out there. Go to the toilet, bathroom, and got questions to write them down in the break, and we'll answer every single person's question. Okay? And I'm sure that don't feel afraid that you can't ask it, because you can ask us absolutely anything, and you're probably going to ask a question that someone else is thinking exactly the same thing. Okay? So we'll come back. So 5 minutes, we'll come back. Everyone? Okay? You don't have to leave, but you can sit there and